Okay, welcome to another episode of Jazz Smack Postgame versus the Trailblazers. We're talking about the Jazz Trailblazers postgame. So we're going to talk about a couple of things in this today. Obviously, the conclusion of the game, how the game went, the Jazz loss in Portland in a close game, and we're also going to talk about the why it's so important for the Jazz to lose games right now, according to the website tankathon.com and their lottery odds that they publish on that website. So we'll start out with I thought it was actually another entertaining game to watch because it was so close. So again, close game, another good loss. The young guys got a lot of time, which is really, really important. So finally, Clarkson doesn't play, Keontae doesn't play. The other guys all got a lot of minutes, and that was really positive. So really happy to see that. And there was a couple of things. We hadn't seen Cody Williams play in a long time, other than the G League, and he actually scored some points tonight, and he played reasonably, even though his plus minus was by far the worst on the team. But he made a couple of shots, so good for him. And I assume that he's going to go back to the G League. I can't imagine he's going to stay up. But those are my initial thoughts. Lowry had a good game. Sexton took a lot of shots. He didn't make a lot of shots, but 11 assists to only one turnover, really good. I mean, the high turnover guy in this game was obviously Collier, but he had 7 assists, but 6 turnovers. That's a lot, but that's kind of what you expect from him. But those are my initial thoughts. I'm just glad they lost the game because I was fearful that they were headed towards a win, and then he tried to play the young guys down the stretch, and they actually lost because of that. So good. I assume that somebody told him that he needs to lose, but we'll see. Thoughts?
Yeah, I wonder if that was intentional by Hardy down the stretch to play Collier instead of Sexton. Because you look at his minutes, Colin at 27 minutes, and he didn't shoot 50% in this game, but still, I think Colin was, if you're picking out who are the best players on the court, Colin would have been one of those, right? It's 3 games in a row where he's running the offense as good as a Colin Sexton can do, and probably 2 to 3 times better than Keontae, if not more. So he, if you're thinking to try to win, Colin should have been playing, and he played Collier instead, which is fine, from our perspective, because we're not trying to win the game. But was that what Hardy was doing, or was he doing what he does with Keontae all the time and say, look, I'd rather have Keontae on the court rather than Sexton? I guess we'll see over time whether that's the case or not. But it was a very entertaining game, as you said. They didn't win by 40 like the last time they played the Blazers, but they were competitive. They played hard. Collier had some turnovers, but honestly, he was a bulldog too. One time he shot the ball. Remember, he shot the ball from the baseline, and fortunately hit the backboard, because if he wouldn't have hit the backboard, I think he would have missed the hoop by 10 feet. I mean, it was like so far off
Oh
his
yeah,
shot.
it went. Honestly, I mean, to do that particular shot and shoot it and it hits the top of the backboard, that's almost next to impossible to do,
Yeah.
unless you're
Yeah.
meaning to do it.
Yeah, it was like wildly off on
Yeah,
the and Kessler had an airball free throw, so did Flip.
yeah,
So Kessler has lost his confidence on the free throw line, which is really too bad. But still, like Kessler again in this game, 30 minutes, 16 rebounds, 2 blocks. This guy he's just playing excellent basketball, 1 or 5, but playing excellent basketball. So bullish on Walker right now and what he's doing. Laurie, shot the ball well, which was great. They were looking for him, which is good. So, it was an entertaining game, and the guys got some minutes. Let's talk about Cody for a minute because 25 minutes, 2 of 3 from the floor, 1 of 1 from the 3-point line. So that's great. Look at the rest of his line.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
One
and this is
rebound.
consistent. Yeah. This
Yeah.
is consistent.
One
with him.
rebound, 1 assist, 1 block. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's with his length, he's got to make a bigger difference on defense, for sure. I mean, no steals. I mean, he's got to get up into guys and at least try to get up into guys. And I would like to see Hardy tell him that, and maybe he is telling him that, and maybe he just isn't doing it. It's hard to know.
Yeah, we don't know that. I mean, we don't know what's going on, and I think one advantage that a guy like David Locke has against us and other people that are Jazz fans and talking about the Jazz is we don't have the inside insight. We don't get to go to practice. We don't know what Hardy tells these guys, but Cody is always referenced to his brother, and fairly or unfairly, that's going to be the way it is. His brother's a tough defender. His brother is a hustler, and for Cody to make it in this league, he's going to have to do that. He's going to have to hit the weight room. He's going to have to do that. And that's like the one thing I've noticed when Cody's played this year, whether it's in summer league or otherwise, he doesn't rebound the ball. And he's big enough he has to. Now, look at Collier's line on the other hand. Isaiah Collier, 3 for 10, probably got lucky on a few of those. 8 rebounds. Man, that kid's tough. I mean, the kid, and he's much smaller than Cody. So that's what we need Cody to do. I mean, I'm thrilled that he got 25 minutes, but we need to toughen Cody up. And get him down in the G League. Let him take some elbows. Let's toughen this guy up, so we can make him into an NBA player.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think that I heard some report that I haven't looked at the G League box scores, but I think he did have. I mean, he was really struggling for a while. I mean, Collier was playing with him, and he wasn't even. I mean, he was just having horrendous games, but I think he turned that around. Had 1 or 2 nice games recently, before he ended up with the Jazz, and the G League just might be on a break right now because of Christmas, and maybe that's why he's with the Jazz. I don't know. I haven't looked at the schedule or box scores or anything. But yeah, and Flip too. It's nice to see actually Flip get 17 minutes. I wish it was a bit more, but Drew Eubanks played this exact same 17 minutes and 36 seconds is Flip, and I can understand playing Drew. I mean, this is a home game for him. He grew up right outside of Portland, so I can understand Drew playing in this game, and Hardy wanting to reward him by giving him some time when he's at home in front of family. So I get that. So overall, I was pleased with the game. I'm just happy they lost. I'm glad it was competitive. The one thing I will say as a team still that I really want to show, I mean, I don't care if the guys get called for fouls, but I just want to see these guys get up into people more and cause more turnovers. The Jazz just do not produce turnovers. I mean, it's just really frustrating. Because that's more about just effort and just getting up and want and desire and being physical with people, and they just don't do it. I mean, it's really frustrating. I just want to see them. I want to see them generate some more turnovers. I mean, right now, if you look at, so Portland had 11 turnovers in this game. Mm-hmm. That's just not enough. So that's my thought on that. And obviously the field goal percentage, Portland shot 51% from the field. It's just indication that the young guys, they got a lot of minutes, but they aren't producing. But the Jazz veterans aren't producing on the defensive end either. I mean, this has been ongoing for 3 years now. So this is the third year in a
Yeah.
row. So it's nothing's changing. So I don't know if it's just the young guys or if it's just a general trend now this is what the Jazz are going to be as long as the current circumstances are as they are, going forward with the coaches that we have. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting and repeating what I just said. We're not in the practices. We're not on the plane with them.
Yeah.
We don't have access. I honestly don't think anyone talks to Locke other than the other the other broadcasters like Thurl, but we don't know that. But he clearly has more access, so we don't know what Hardy is preaching to these guys. But we know about playing basketball is that there's that player that is always nagging at you and guarding you all the way up the court. You make mistakes because you're uncomfortable. When anyone plays the Jazz, no one's ever uncomfortable. Isaiah makes him uncomfortable. Colin tries to make him uncomfortable, but honestly, his defensive technique is not stellar. He gets picked off in picks and doesn't see them. But no, we don't make people uncomfortable. And I do think that's players, but it's also coaching. And let's hope that Hardy is coaching that. But given that we're the worst defensive rating in the league 2 years in a row, you got to figure he's not doing that. That's not his skill. I'm not sure what his skill is, but it's clearly not defense. So that's concerning, and it's game after game. You're right. I mean, the statistics just don't go well. I think that if you looked at turnovers against, my guess is we're one of the worst in the league because of the other team doesn't turn it over against us. We just don't make it uncomfortable. And that was clearly the last couple nights. It's the same way. So we should get up. Let's see if anybody had steals for our team here. Marketing
3.
probably had 11 steals, because Marketing doesn't really press anybody. Walker does. So, but even Collier, didn't have him, and he often does. So it was, but we lost, right? I was very worried at the end that we were going to win this game.
Yeah, I honestly, I thought they were I thought they were headed towards a win. I go, oh my gosh, they can't win this game. That would be 3 out of 4. I mean, they can't win this game. But yeah, thankfully they lost. That's the number one most important factor of this entire game. They lost.
Yeah, and Portland's going to be selling off assets very soon. Like, go down to their team. Let's take a look at who they have there to sell off. So they're going to try to sell off Grant. I don't think he's going to be as easy to sell off is because he's got a big contract, and now teams with the double, they're afraid to take on these big contracts. And 3 rebounds. That's what I told you the other day. Jeremy Grant, 31 minutes, 3 rebounds. So I did look at his 3-point percentage is like 35, so it's gone up from what it was. But he's got a big contract for that level of results. Can score. I'm not taking that away from him. So he's going to be Ayton. They're going to try to move. Same issue. Ayton's a talented offensive player, 12 rebounds. No defense. Is that 2 or 3? 2 blocks, but no defense. They're going to try to sell off him. I don't know if there's a lot of takers for Ayton. I think there's more for Grant than there is for Ayton's. They may try to move Simons. Rumors that they may try to move Simons. And frankly, I think that Simons is a good player, so I don't know why they're down on Simons, but I think Sharp is going to take over for him. And then they're also trying to move Robert Williams, but the guy hasn't played in like 3 years. So, yeah, if he plays, he's good, but he'll never play. So I think somebody would take him for nothing, but who's going to give a lot for him? But if they get rid of Ayton and Grant, this team's going to lose every game. Right? I mean, they're going to be brutal, and so we need some gap between them before they do that.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that pretty much everybody on their roster is up for trade other than Klingon and Henderson. So Scoot
Yeah.
and Klingon, and I think that no one else on that team is untouchable. I think that actually everybody else on that team is readily available. That's what I would assume.
I think Sharp is they're not going to trade Sharp either. I think they're bullish. I've read that they're bullish on Sharp,
Yeah,
and I think
I
he's
wouldn't. I yeah, that would be my number three, but and I don't know what his age. What is that guy's age?
click on Sharp. I bet he's
Yeah,
23. He's young,
21. So he's really young.
6'5", and what's his stats? Let's take a look at his stats. Yeah, they're not going to trade Sharp. He has been injured though, so that's the worry with Shaded. So 24, 25, 30 minutes a game. Um, wow, 29.5 from three. Boy, he's a Keontae. Um, but 80% free throw, 82 the year before shows he can
Yeah,
shoot the
and
basketball.
he did shoot 33% last year too, and 36% as a rookie. So he's going the wrong direction from
Yeah.
the three. But he can. I mean, that guy obviously has the ability to shoot. It might just be shot selection, you know.
Hmm.
But I would say he's the number three guy, and at that age, there's no reason to move him.
Yeah. So but entertaining game, and we lost, so we can't. That's we can't be upset about that. I mean, that's what we've been looking for is loss or draft positioning, but something that we can enjoy. And I enjoyed the game.
Yeah,
Um,
and the young
you
guys
know,
need to get minutes.
yeah,
So
yeah.
with
So that
some
was
luck, the
good.
young guys get minutes, and they can still make it competitive.
Yeah, and boy, it's just 3 games in a row not having to watch Keontae and his
Yeah, and
cockiness. Wow,
yeah,
it's so great.
it's
Boy, for me
better,
not to have to see Keontae.
and especially tonight, we didn't have to watch Clarkson too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, not Keontae like trying to fight somebody in the stands that he can't get at instead of somebody on the floor that is right up in his face.
Yeah,
Like, I can't just deal.
pretending he
Yeah,
wants to fight somebody in the stands. The guy who's always hurt, pretending to be
yeah,
hurt, not really hurt, but pretending to be hurt.
yeah. So let's go to the draft positioning,
Okay, here it is.
because I've been thinking a lot about this, and honestly, I'll give credit to Hoops Nerd for this. Not this, but Hoops Nerd made this point, and I don't know if it was like Hoops Nerd on his own or he heard somebody else say it, but I'll give it credit to Hoops Nerd because he made the point. And I agreed with like so let me make the point, and then we can talk about this. He said that in his view, what you're trying to do when you're losing is you're trying to set a floor. That's what's most important here is you're setting a floor. And if you're the worst record in the league, which is New Orleans, it has the number one draft pick in Zion Williamson recently, is the worst in the league. So if you look at New Orleans, the worst they can do is the fifth pick. So even
Yeah,
if they bomb in the lottery, the worst they can do is the fifth pick. The Washington Wizards, the worst they can do is the sixth pick. The number three, the worst they can do is the seventh pick. Now, the seventh pick sometimes is not a great player. But in this draft, you hear that, okay, there's five guys that are potentially, you don't know which one's going to be better. Like, we don't know. No one knows. And so if you're in the 5, 6, that's the worst you could do. You're probably still okay. It's still a crapshoot. But I agree with that perspective of what he's saying is that, look, that's why it's important to like lose here in the way the lottery's set up. Because even if we're unlucky, and the Jazz have been unlucky for 40 years, if we're the worst record in the league, the worst we can do is the number 5 pick, right? That's still a win for us. I mean, it's still a win because we have a decent odds of getting a good player. So I wanted to point out that, and then I'll say on the flip side of that that I don't think Hoosner didn't say a thing about is that there's also odds in this. The worst three records are 14% of getting the top pick. It drops 12 and a half, 10. Well, 14%, or my calculator. Uh, Let me get my calculator. So 14% versus 10.5. That's 33% better odds of getting the number one pick than the fifth pick. Well, 33% higher is significant, right? It's still, it may be only 3.5 points. I get that. But one relative to the other is a big deal. And what we're really trying to do here is we're trying to increase our odds of getting a higher pick. And so you have the floor and you increase your odds. And that's our, and that's what we're shooting for, trying to get a Wemby, trying to get somebody like that.
Yeah. Well, the other side of this is if the Jazz end up with the fifth worst record in the league as they are right now, I mean, they could end up right where they are last year with the ninth pick. It's possible that they could end up with the ninth pick. If the Jazz ended up with the ninth pick, in that range again, that's another bad season. That's not what you want. I mean, they got to avoid even the possibility of ending up that low in the draft. They cannot even take the chance. They have to get one of those top positions. They have to do that. I don't care what it takes. They have to do that because they're on a path to nowhere if they get another ninth pick.
Yeah. And I don't think anyone's seen these odds. Now, there's something else I wanted to make the comment on because there's a lot of Jazz fans and a lot of NBA fans that take the position we should not tank. And honestly, I respect that view, right? Like the one thing the Jazz have done, unlike other teams, the reason we've never got the number one draft pick and we've gotten very few that are high, and we can go back and get the stats on that to just amaze people at how few there are, is as an organization, we've taken the position not to tank. And honestly, that's how the NBA draft should work. The problem is that's not how David Stern, in what's the guy's name now? Adam Silver. Can't stand that guy. So Adam Silver, they've set this thing up that teams are incentivized to lose. And it's terrible for the game we love. Terrible. Like if you said there's 14 teams here, and great, and man, it's great to see Minnesota in the lottery too, because we got their pick. But if you had those 14, or say 10, and they had even odds of getting, like it was just, look, it's a crapshoot, right? If you're number 10, you get the number one draft pick. Would anybody be trying to tank? Or would you try to say, look, I'm not going to sell off my players. I'm going to do as best I can because it's more enjoyable for our fans to win games.
Yeah.
And then you would have like competitive, you would still try to say, I'm going to sell some of my veterans because I want to have more draft shots, shots on goal. But you wouldn't be trying to lose. New Orleans and Washington from day one have been trying to lose every game. Right? It's not good for our sport. And after the trade deadline, there's going to be 7-8 teams that are trying to lose every game. And that's not good. It's not good for our sport at all. That's what the case is. But we have to acknowledge the game is played by getting top draft picks. San Antonio's done it multiple times. Golden State did it in 2020. I looked it up today. Where was Golden State ranked in 2020 when they got James Wiseman? Where do you think their record was?
I mean, I can't. I don't recall. I have no idea. I assume it was one of the worst records. In the fifth worst. It was the worst record.
The worst record, 15. They put when Curry got hurt and Thompson was still out. They shut their whole team down. Because they knew, let's try to get the highest draft pick we possibly can. And they played the game. Is it the game that any NBA team should play? No. But it's the game that the league set up for us, that if you want to win in this league, you've got to tank. And unfortunately, San Antonio's done it repeatedly. Tim Duncan, I don't know if they did it for David Robinson, but I assume for David Robinson, for Wemby, we've got to play the game. Do I hope they change the system? Of course I do, because I think it's terrible. Like we should not be trying to get the worst record in the league. We should be trying to be competitive and have even chance if we get the number 15th.
Yeah, it's actually, I think they're, obviously the idea is, okay, we're going to keep on giving these really high draft picks to the worst teams so they can turn it around. But the problem is I mean, we want the Jazz to lose, but there is a culture element to this too. If you just get used to losing and all your players are used to losing, I mean, it's a negative culture. I mean, instead of trying to win and building to win, you're trying to lose to get draft picks. And so it's really, it's certainly counterproductive. I mean, that's just all, there's nothing more to say. It's counterproductive. So yeah, in addition to the 3-pointers and all the threes being shot, the NBA needs to address some of these things. I mean, if they want the fans to come back, they need to actually address these issues really address them, not just talk about them, but actually do something about them. Because the American fan base, I know the game is really popular in China and other places, but the American fan base obviously isn't watching the NBA like it once did. So they need to address these issues.
Yeah. There's an article I'm going to send you. We can talk about it in another podcast. Sam Smith. And Sam Smith is one of the worst writers in the NBA, just a clown. But he came up with, I think, the 11 reasons why, like NBA ratings are down. And, one of them was too many 3-point shots and, all this stuff. But what this is not one of them was on it. And to me, this is one of the key ones, is that there's a selection of teams that are doing everything they can to lose. And when you're thinking about, okay, I want to create a culture in the NBA that the teams with the best records do the best. Well, then you have these give me games where they give up. And particularly if you have those teams later on the year when they really give up, it takes away the whole it's almost like you're betting on your team to lose, right? I mean, that's just not how you should be incenting your team every game to win, right? I mean, that should be the culture, and it's not right now, and it's hurting the league. But having said that, if we want to have a championship team, we've got to play the game until they fix it. If Silver will fix it, and I'm not confident he's smart enough to do that. Until they fix it, we got to play the game. So New Orleans is playing the game. They've said, look, we're going to, Zion Williams probably not going to be the guy. So we're going to see if we can go get the guy. Or we're going to trade away Zion Williamson. I think that's what they're trying to do now. And probably somebody will pay a decent bounty for him, even with his injury history. Because, boy, if you can turn Zion around, he's a dominant player. But I think they've given up on him. So now they're like, look at their record. I mean, it's the worst in the league, and they have talent. You imagine they get the top draft pick, and they fit it in with the rest of the guys, and they trade away Zion. They could turn it around in a hurry.
Yeah, I think that they're going to, obviously they've been trying to sell Ingram, and obviously they'll try and sell Zion too. I mean, that team should not be the worst record in the NBA. I mean, that's just a joke, actually. It's an absolute joke that team is the worst record in the NBA. It's pathetic.
But do you think they're trying to lose? I think they are. I think they're.
Yeah.
And Zion is rumored coming back. I think they're going to try to move him before having to bring him back and play, because they'll win games with him.
Well, if I were New Orleans, I would. If I could get draft capital for the guy, I would move him. There's no doubt.
I would too.
After considering, I mean, I don't know how many years he's been in the league, like 5, 6. I mean, he never plays. And Ingram's always hurt too. That guy never plays. You got to have. You can't build a franchise around players that never play. And the Clippers also, they have Kawhi Leonard. The dude never plays for the last 4 years or whatever. He just doesn't play basketball anymore. So what's the point? What's the point of having that guy? I wouldn't trade for any of those guys. any of those three. I would not want any of those three on my team.
Yeah, it's amazing at how good the Clippers are with the players they have, with Leonard not playing. So give some credit to guys like Dunn that have come in and is a quality player down in the NBA. I mean, not a top 100, but a quality player in the NBA. It's I think New Orleans is going to be selling, as you said. I think that, and it's a smart thing to do because so the other thing I wanted to point out and like how fast this can turn around. So that 2020 draft we were talking about in the last episode. So Ant went number one, Wiseman went number two, and Ant obviously went to Minnesota. In that season, Minnesota was either the second or third worst record in the league. Last year they made it to the Western Conference Finals. This year they're struggling a little bit, but they're struggling because idiotically for some reason they traded away Towns, and just got some bad fits. But you can turn this around in a hurry with a player. Now, Ant's a top 10 player. You got to get that guy. But this was 2020. And last year they made it to the Western Conference Finals. And frankly, I'm shocked they didn't beat Dallas in that. And they lost, they lost badly, but I can't really figure out like why they lost badly. Because, they were cooking last year. And I thought they would again this year. So you could turn it around in a hurry, but you need the guy. And that's what we have to be focusing on. And I want to be, I guess I would be, in looking at these, what would you be satisfied with? If you look at these odds now, which of these draft positions would you say, okay, I'm okay with that slot?
I want 1, 2, or 3.
I'm just saying.
I want 1, 2. I want 1, 2, or 3. Those are because that gives me, at the worst case scenario, we end up with 7.
Yeah.
So I can live with that, and that's a small chance to end up with 7.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
I can live with that, but that gives us the same odds to get those top 4 picks. Gives us the same odds. Is the number even if you end up at number 3, it gives us the same odds to get those top 4, the top 4 as number 1. So I think I want 1, 2, or 3.
I'm exactly the same. To me, I'm shooting for 1, 2, or 3. And here's my final point on this, and why I think this needs to change. What if you are a fan of New Orleans or Detroit last year, and you're the worst record in the league, and it's a miserable year, and you end up getting the 5th pick? Can you imagine? And you only have 1 pick in the draft. Say you're not smart like Ainge and get multiple shots on goal. Can you imagine the despair, the disappointment you have as an NBA fan of your team, that you suffered through a just terrible season and you get the 5th pick, versus have a team that's semi-competitive and can play games, and okay, maybe you have the worst record in the league, but still it was a fun year because you weren't getting blown out every game. If you get the 5th pick in that scenario, like, okay, right, I really wanted the number 1, or you get the 10th, but at least was entertaining. Like Detroit lost 23 games in a row, and then and that actually happened to them. They fell down. Now, of course, they did have the number 1 pick in Cade Cunningham, so they had nothing to complain about because we never had the number 1 pick. But it's just it's a bad system, and I really I hope it changes. I think it's really bad for basketball, and after the trade deadline, it's even worse than it is now, because it won't just be New Orleans, Washington, Toronto. It'll be 7, 8 teams that are trying to lose every game but not saying it.
Yeah. I hate it. I'd actually rather them start to penalize teams that always lose. I would rather them do that. I mean, what, you lose 2 years in a row and you're one of the 5 worst records in the league? Well, then you lose your draft position or something. Yeah,
Yeah.
to do something like that and start to penalize teams for losing year after year after year, rather than incentivizing losing year after year after
Hmm.
year. So,
Hmm.
so something needs to be done, something significant, not just window dressing. I want actually something significant done to change that.
Yeah, and this is one where you would think the owners should be on the same page. Like they want butts in the seat. They want people to be excited and buying jerseys. If your team stinks year after year, um, people don't do that. And so I would think that they would want that as a more competitive game where teams have the incentive to win. So let's see. But I'm not, just because I've seen the management of the NBA just being so off on like creating this great product when they could. I'm just not confident. So, but anyhow, I think it's very interesting to see these odds because I don't think a lot of people understand these odds and really how it works. And this floor concept that Hoops Nerd, he's right. You're the worst record in the league. The worst you can do is number 5. And if you're the second worst, the worst you could do is number 6. And there's value there.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, anything else to say tonight, or should call it?
That's all I got.
All right, I think I've said what everything that I need to say too. Well, we will talk to you guys after the next broadcast here on Jazz Smack, and we'll see you after the next game.